Welcome back to Go Read Some Books podcast. I'm Shane Skelton along with Josh Fillmore.
Hello.
If you are one of those who just can't stop checking, clicking, surfing, and liking, or you just can't be without your device for 1 minute, you need to read this book we're going to talk about today because you may be addicted to technology.
Sounds like my life.
Well, this book shows you how you got there, and it shows you the steps you need to take to recover and get your life back on track. All right, today we're going to talk about a book called Irresistible. There it is, Irresistible, The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked. It's by Adam Alter. Now, I have to say, I was in Indianapolis this past week, and I had to take a trip up there for a few days, and I took this book with me to kind of read it on the plane, and I found it mesmerizing. It was a fantastic book. It's probably one of the most addictive books I've read in a while.
How convenient. Addicted from technology to addicted to books.
It's like Alter wrote an addictive book about addiction. I mean, it's fantastic. It really is, because he illuminates the obsession that's controlling our lives. And then he offers tools. He don't just leave us there, but he offers tools on how to rescue our sanity and get back on track. But whether we realize it or not, we are addicted to technology. We're hooked. And there's a team and an army of people behind that screen that's keeping us hooked. And did you know that there's a term called nomophobia?
No, I didn't know that.
Nomophobia means the feeling of anxiety when you realize you've left your phone somewhere.
You would actually diagnose that?
It's a nomophobia. I mean, you have this anxiety.
You get down the driveway and you're like, oh, I got to go back.
Isn't that something? It's an anxious feeling that you have that shows you that you're addicted. Right. What's the first thing people do when they get up in the morning?
Check my phone.
Check their phones. Yep. That's, I mean, if that was alcohol, what would we be saying? If that was heroin, what would we be saying?
Yeah.
So you got a problem.
Yeah.
You got a problem. Matter of fact, did you know that people check their phone on an average of 50 times a day, which I think's it's probably higher than that, to be honest with you, but 50 times a day with an average of 4 hours in their day, either checking email, doing social media and things of that nature. Well, if you divide all that out, that's about 15 years of your life. Checking email, surfing the web, playing games, being on social media. I mean, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time. Yeah. We know that there's halfway houses and rehab houses for people that are alcoholics and drug addicts and all that other thing. But did you know that there is an actual rehab for tech addicts?
I didn't know that, but when you started that conversation, I'm thinking capitalism. Hey,
That's exactly.
Went back to the book that we reviewed about.
Yeah, there's some money to be made.
That's right.
But you know, it's called Restart.
Wow.
And it's people that are addicted to technology, and it's incredible the way he goes through this book and shows us how people get hooked. You don't realize it. I mean, from the time that kids are able to just basically hold something in their hand, or they're put in front of the TV. Now think about if we'd have done that with drugs or alcohol or pornography or things of that nature, we would be up in arms. But we don't think twice about giving our kids things that are just as addictive, and it does the same thing to the brain. And he goes through it in this book. It shows us how our brain becomes addictive to certain things, and it's the same way with technology. It releases these chemicals in the brain that cause us to be addicted to social media and to technology in general. And so I think it's a brilliant guide to how to navigate the technical landscape. I think everybody should read it. I couldn't put it down. I mean, I told you last week, I said this book is going to be, I think, one of the books that I'm going to go to periodically in my library. I just find it fascinating. One of the stories he tells in the book is in 2010, which I saw this in 2010, but I didn't realize, this particular event took place till I was reading the book. But in 2010, Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, he unveiled the iPad. Now, Steve Jobs said, and I remember him saying, what this device does, talking about the iPad, is extraordinary. It offers the best way to browse the web, way better than a laptop, and way better than a smartphone. It's an incredible experience. It's phenomenal. For mail, it's a dream to type on. And then he goes on for like 90 minutes to explain why the iPad was the best way to look at photos, listen to music, take classes, search the internet and Facebook and play games and to navigate all these apps. He goes on to try to sell us on the product. But at the end of the talk, he said that everybody ought to own an iPad. Well, what did we do? We all went out and bought an iPad. Right. I use an iPad every day just about. I preach from an iPad. I use that instead of, handwriting my notes and things of that.
Yeah, I use it for work too.
Yeah, so. It's incredible. And there's a use for that. But did you know that he refused to let his own kids use the device?
Did not know that.
He did not let his kids have an iPad.
What was the reasoning?
He said this, and he told this to the New York Times writer John Bilton. He said his children had never used the iPad. He said, we limit how much technology our kids use in the home.
It's like the dope dealer not letting his kids.
It's exactly. You know what? That's what he talks about in the book. Matter of fact, let's see. I think it's the first chapter. Let me see what he said here. Never get high on your own supply.
I was just thinking, like, are you serious?
It's exactly right. But, he goes on to talk about how that all of the world's greatest technocrats were really technophobes, and they limited their use of electronics in their home because they realized the addiction that it comes with it. Now, think about this. Can you imagine the outcry if religious leaders like myself refused to let their children practice religion? What are you doing? That would be a great outcry. But yet many experts, both within and beyond the world of tech, have similar views. They will not allow their kids to have iPads, iPhones,
and I'm going to be honest with you. The biggest, this just happened a few weeks ago. I heard my two daughters screaming, and like full blood screaming at each other, like they were going to kill each other, right? And so I'm like running around the corner, like, what happened? What's going on? My daughter, Addie, the littlest one, 1.5, has a hold of the phone that my other oldest daughter, 6, was watching. They were watching Baby Shark, I think it was, or whatever. And she didn't apparently play Baby Shark enough for the littlest one, and she went into full-blown panic mode over not being able to see that. 1.5 years old. And I'm telling you right now, if she could have killed my oldest daughter, she would have. There was that much hate and anger in her over a cell phone.
It's like you're taking heroin away from an addict.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are we doing to our kids? Next week, maybe we'll do screens and teens.
Okay.
The addiction of our kids to technology. We'll do that book next week. I think that's a whole, whole nother thing that avenue that we need to explore about how much we're, exposing our kids to this.
Right. And
we're teaching them to become addicts. Greg Hatchmuth, I think that's the way you pronounce his name. He's one of the founders of Instagram. And he realized that he was building an engine for addicts. That's what he said. He said there's always another hashtag to click on. It takes on its own life, and it becomes its own organism, and people become obsessive. They got another, hashtag to look at and another picture to look at. Social media platforms, it's a bottomless pit.
Yeah, and it's designed that way.
Netflix is you think about that. Netflix, when you get done with one,
it auto show you the next one.
It goes right 3 seconds, boom, boom, boom. You're in the next show, and you binge watch, where before when Netflix first came out, you at least had to go back out of it, come back in.
What a pain in the butt that
was.
Oh,
yeah, right. Versus having to wait, a week for the series back when we was kids. Yeah.
Like,
but
who does that?
It's
Who
all
waits
designed. It's all designed to keep us hooked. It's all designed to keep us sitting there. Think about how Facebook, it's an endless feed. It just keeps going and going and going and scrolling. And we do that trying to, working on our social media platforms here at the church. And that, how to get people to stop and look because people are just constantly scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Tricia Harris, she's called a design I think it's called an ethicist.
Ethicist.
Yeah, a design ethicist, something like that. She said the problem is that people do not like willpower. The problem is it's the thousands of people on the other side of the screen whose job it is to break down their willpower. I mean, you're one person against thousands that are trying to hook you and keep you addicted. And so there's going to be more things to look at, more things to keep you involved. And it's an addiction. It really is. It just keeps evolving. You think about how in 2004, Facebook, when it came, I mean, it was fun, right? You know what it is today? It's addictive.
It is. Yeah. There's been many times where I've gone in, I'm just going to see what my notifications are just to see, whatever picture that I put, how well it's liked. How well it was liked and, to get that social improvement, But so go in and then you're like, so you comment on the one that notified or another comment or you re-comment. And then before you know it, you're like, oh, that was a cool picture. Oh, that was a cool video. And then before you know it, you're 15 minutes in of just wasted time. I raise my hand. I'm as guilty as sin when it comes to that,
I mean, isn't it ironic that, we're reviewing a book about addictions on a podcast that you listen to on your device.
That I'm gonna go ahead and try to, SEO so that you'll find it.
But he goes into talk, and that's what this book is so brilliant because he goes into talk about how to use it for the good and not be addicted to it. So it doesn't just leave you where you are. In addiction, it shows you how you were hooked, how that everything's designed to keep you hooked, but it also shows you a way forward. So it doesn't leave you where you are, and it's an excellent book with that.
What's the first step of addiction is recognizing that you have an addiction.
I got a problem there. But
hi, my name is Josh. I have a problem.
My name is Josh. I'm a tech addict.
Tech junkie.
But he does show you how to minimize the behavioral addictions, and harness them for benefit. Because bottom line is this: the same technology that can cause you to be addictive is the same technology that could actually cause you to be educated. And, the same addictions that you have towards your technology can also be harnessed to help your portfolio or there's millions of ways of which it can help you, but you have to understand that it's also very addictive too. And you have to control that.
Right. Well, we actually, I help out in the youth group, and we actually just did this study last Wednesday.
Is that right?
And Brother Mark was going over all of how it's addicting, but he also said that, the study that we went is said you could use it for the good, and that's what you should do. You should use technology because it's part of the way the world's evolving and the way that socials are, connecting with each other, but figure out how to use it for the good, not for the bad. That was his biggest thing was
control it. Don't let it control you.
Exactly.
If the first thing you need to do is check your phone in the morning, you got a problem.
Right.
If you're spending 4 hours a day on social media, playing games or whatever, scrolling Facebook, Instagram, you got a problem.
Right.
I mean, there's a major problem there.
Well, his thing was to make sure that you do everything to glorify God. So if you're going to be on social media and you're going to be using your tech, use your tech to glorify God. Help it to be a soul winning, or help it to, show somebody who may not know what a Bible verse is, or, share your favorite verse. Do something that's going to actually have a good intention.
Sure. This book goes into, and I think it's excellent the way that he does it, but he talks about the 6 ingredients that lead to behavioral addictions. And here they are. He says, in order for them to hook you and keep you hooked, here's the 6 things. First of all, that social platform, that game, or whatever it may be, it must have a compelling goal that's just beyond the reach. I think of Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, all those things when I was a kid, it was just beyond my reach, And so I had to go back. I had to try to find it. I had to try to reach it. And that's a hook. That's a hook. Second of all, it must have irresistible and predictive positive feedback. And that's what you think about Facebook and Instagram, the likes.
Yep, likes and the hearts.
Yeah, you got to have that positive feedback, and it becomes irresistible to you. I mean, you're like, you want that affirmation. And so it's a hook. Thirdly, you must have a sense of incremental progress and improvement. So you can't dial level 1 every time. I mean, you got to have some incremental progress and improvement. That's a hook. Then number 4, the task must become more difficult over time. I think about Tetris and all those that I came up on, Pong. It got faster as it went along. So it has to have those, those levels of difficulty that just keep you coming back because we're wired to overcome things like that. And then fifthly, there must be unresolved tension that demands resolution. Okay, so you just can't leave it.
Right.
It's like a cliffhanger on Dallas when I was a kid. Who shot JR? So I'm dating myself now. Right. I mean, you had to back then. You had to wait, months before the new season come out to find out who shot JR. Now you just wait 3 seconds and another episode starts. So it doesn't leave you on a cliffhanger. You got to have resolution. You got to have that I guess we would say that closure. You got to have that. And so most of all your TV shows, things of that nature, your movies and all that, they have those hooks to keep you coming back because you've got to see that tension resolved. And then sixthly, there should be a strong social connection to it. So there's got to be this strong social connection. That's where Facebook comes into play, Instagram. You like to connect. There is actually World of Warcraft, the thing where you're connected to all these different. There are people that literally, I mean, they'll spend weeks and months on this stupid thing, and they're connected to all these different people, and they're addicted to it. I'm telling you, these things are hooks that get into us, and we can't stop. We become addicts to it, just like a drunk with alcohol or a dope addict with drugs.
Well, I'll share my personal experience with this. Okay, so when we first got married, I convinced my wife that we needed to buy a PlayStation. I think it was a 3 at the time, okay, because it had a DVD player. We could watch, it had a Blu-ray player in it so that we could watch Blu-rays, right? Yeah. So anyway, I convinced her to buy this thing for me, and we ended up getting that was when that SOCOM game, the Navy SEAL game first came out, and it was like when they first connected, where you could play online and actually talk with people. So I had this headset, I was all in it, man. I was all geeked out in this war game, And so we're playing this game, and you'd get in these rooms and groups, and then you'd play together, and you could hear each other talking. So like one side wouldn't hear the other. Anyway, so you felt like you were in a platoon as you're running with wired headsets and whatever. And so I'm playing, and this guy's like, he's apparently a lot more involved than I was. I guess he was some pro or whatever that played for a living or whatnot. So we're trying to, learn this game with him or whatever. And he's like cussing me out and like, like I was some kind of a, grunt in the military. And I'm like, and I just had that epiphany. I'm sitting here, I'm like, it's like 2:00 in the morning. I got to work tomorrow. I got some guy, I have no idea who he is, yelling and screaming at me like he's my mom, cussing me over the phone, over the internet. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is ridiculous.
Oh, I know.
Next day, everything went on Craigslist and I bought a John boat. Yeah. I'm like, I'm getting back outside. This is ridiculous.
They're actually offering scholarships now.
Yeah.
Colleges are offering scholarships for people who play. They have whole shows on the television about, gamers.
Yeah.
That must make some mother proud. I mean, I'm telling you, it just it blows my mind. I came up in an era where we didn't have any of this stuff.
Right.
So I've seen both sides of the fence. I've seen where, I mean, you were connected to a cord with a phone in the wall in the kitchen.
Right.
And that was your social media. And you had, when I was a child, where I grew up at, we had party lines, which, you pick up the phone and somebody else, your neighbor's on it. You know, you're sharing a line with them. You have to say, now, Miss Thelma, you need to, wrap this up.
I gotta call my girlfriend.
Yeah, that's right. You're my sweetheart.
See, we were actually talking about that the other day. Me and Erica in the car. We were sitting there. We were driving. Erica's my wife, by the way, and we were talking about what it was like. Do you remember what it was like not having a cell phone?
Oh,
like
yeah. I mean,
I didn't get a cell phone until I was 18 years old. So, my daughter who just turned 6 was asking for an iPhone for her birthday. I'm like, no, you're not getting an iPhone. But, at 6, I would have never, which of course they never have them, but I would have never even guessed to even think about even wanting one. But
yeah, I grew up without all that stuff. Yeah. So I understand, what it is to go out and play with a stick. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, we lived out in the country. So, I mean, you had a stick and a rock and you played, ball with that or whatever it may be. But I've also raised kids in this generation, and so I've seen both sides of the fence, and I can see where I came up. It has its drawbacks, but I can see the simplicity and the draw to that as well, and the yearning to get back to that. Right. But I also see the good that technology can bring, and I've also seen the bad that it can bring. So the balancing those two worlds for me has been it's been a challenge, but. We live in a society, and we have to think of it like this: when an alcoholic comes out of rehab, or when he is overcoming his addiction, the first thing that he understands and he knows is he can't go back to the bar. He needs to avoid that. He needs to stay away from take a wide berth around places like that. The drug addict needs to understand he's got to stay away from his dealer. Right. You got to remove yourself from the atmosphere of that. I mean, that's 101 when it comes to addictions. But when it comes to technology and people overcoming technology, that's a different ball game, because we live in a world that you have to have technology. Right. You don't have to have alcohol. You don't have to have drugs. But you have to have an email account just to get a job, just about. You have to have some sort of social media to just engage in today's society. So you can't remove yourself like an addict could if he's a drunk. He can't remove yourself from that situation, so you have to learn to deal with it. So the same principles that drive children to play games can also drive them to learn at school. And you have to harness it. So this book really helps you with that starting point. And so I found it very fascinating. And once I began to read it, I began to examine my own heart and life. How addicted am I to these things? And so I started putting some safeguards into play. And I think this is something that everybody ought to read to understand how that there's an army of people that is on the other side of that screen that is not for you. Right. And so you need to understand that. And knowledge is half the battle, as I said in G.I. Joe's day when I was a kid. So I think it's a good book. I think you ought to read it. I think everybody ought to read it and have it in their library.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds good. Just to hit one last thing, I understand perfectly. I do a lot of research and a lot of study on how this works because, of course, it's what I do. But the way social media platforms, and we've discussed it, the way it works is they want you to stay on there because the longer that they can show screen time on platform with you, the more money that they can make from investors. So their whole ball game is to keep you hooked in.
Money
is all wrapped around money and keeping you addicted.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I tell you, this book is an eye opener because I promise you that 90% of the people that you talk to, and if you was to poll them about their addiction to technology, 90% of them would underestimate that and say, oh, no, I'm not addicted to that. But yet you begin to track what they're doing and how much time they're spending. I promise you, they are classic addicts.
And kind of play devil's advocate, there's an app that you can download.
Yeah, there's an app for that.
There's technology that you can download on your phone to tell you exactly
I'd rather have a book for that. Yeah, to be honest with you.
Well, no,
but you could be addicted to books too. Yeah. I mean, there's addictive behavior to all this.
Well, the thing is, though, is that App will actually tell you how much screen time you're using.
Mine does. Yeah,
and so that way it'll let you know if you are an addict or not.
Yeah. I actually looked at that this morning. I was like, I want to make sure how much screen time I've had today. So it's
got it.
It's very addictive, and you need to be aware of it.
All right. Well, that'll wrap it up for today. I think that's all the beating I can take.
It's an eye opener.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been 11 years of your life.
That's right. So, as always, you can find us on social media. I know it's been the demon for the talk today, but you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah. We are also, of course, on YouTube. If you're watching our YouTube, we also have, of course, podcasts that you can listen to in the car. And find us, subscribe, like us. That way you get notified as soon as we put something out.
So you can go right to your phone.
And then you can go right to it. But as always, God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.